We will begin our study of the third column with an in-depth analysis of the 7 self-interests mentioned in the Big Book at the bottom of page 64 and the top of page 65. Remember, self manifested in various ways was what had defeated us, so we considered its common manifestations. To help us envision the self's concerns and interests, let's use the ego's stage character mentioned on page 60. This stage character is the perceived, made-up, isolated hero battling for survival in our daydreams. Recall, our self is the now made-up identity after we have thrown away our spiritual identity as children of God, and instead made the choice to identify with our bodies and our egos. We will see how frustrated and frightened the self gets when it no longer recognizes oneness and no longer feels a part of the whole. When the self's perception, as directed and manipulated by its chattering ego, begins to feel intensely aware the whole or oneness is something separate from the self. When oneness becomes something the self no longer recognizes, the self fails to understand the whole and the whole's relationship to the self. Remember, that which we do not understand, we fear, and that which we fear, which seems separate from us, out there plotting against us, we come to see as adversary, and we grow to hate it. We come to hate and mistrust the whole. Through these inventories and searching, we begin to see how pointless it is to seek for power and protection out in the world. It is only by examining our selves and our thought lives that we begin to recognize the exact nature of our wrongs. By acknowledging and understanding our defects of character, we become willing to ask our higher power to remove our defects of character. One, self-esteem. Our self-esteem refers to how our self sees our stage character faring in each scene, and the play as a whole. The dictionary definition for esteem: respect and admiration, typically for a person. In this case, this is me admiring my actor or ego self. Inventories typically reveal we have great respect and admiration for ourselves. 2. Pride. Pride is how we believe the rest of the players are supposed to see our actor or self. The dictionary definition for pride is: 1. A deep pleasure derived from one's own achievements as seen in the eyes of those observing him or her. 2. A deep pleasure derived from those witnessing the achievements of those with whom one is closely associated. Or 3. A deep pleasure derived when others witness the self's more widely admired qualities or possessions. 3. Ambition. Ambition is what we believe we must get from each scene for the scene to be successful in furthering ourselves' individual cause. The dictionary definition for ambition is: an eager or strong desire to achieve something, such as fame or power. 4. Security. Security is what we believe must happen in each scene for us to remain safe. Trying to perceive ourselves as safe and secure when we believe we are physical bodies is fraught with never-ending fears and complications. The dictionary definition for security is: 1. Freedom from risk or danger, safety. 2. Freedom from doubt, anxiety, or fear, confidence. 5. Personal relations. Personal relations refers to the self's deep-seated belief each of the self's now fluctuating relationships should look like. The dictionary definition for relationship is: a particular type of connection existing between people related to or having dealings with each other. 6. Sex relations. Sex relations refers to the self's deep-seated beliefs of how a real man or woman should behave in each situation. The dictionary definition for sexual relationship is: a sexual or romantic relationship, especially one that continues for a long time. 7. Pocketbook. Pocketbook refers to the ego's interpretation of what finances are and what finances are for. Let's now review and take a more in-depth look at the exact nature of the 7 self-interests. Remember now, self-esteem has everything to do with us as individuals admiring or worshiping ourselves. God created me. Then, as I made up my ego, I pushed aside my spiritual identity as a child of God. Now, instead of identifying myself as a spirit, I identify with my body and my ego. And I now spend my days admiring and worshiping what I think I have created, my ego self. I haven't actually created anything. I just pushed aside the fact that God created me. I threw the knowledge He created me away and replaced the truth with my own illusory interpretation of what I and everyone else are. Now, I and everyone else seem to be nothing more than just ego-driven physical bodies. Bodies carrying out a temporary existence under the direction of the ego. Now, whenever my ego self perceives a scenario or scene as anything less than acceptable as measured by the ego's ever-fluctuating criteria, I experience stress. When this happens, my ego inflates, becoming more predatory. Then, as my ego processes the incident and contrives ways of effectively managing or manipulating the unacceptable scenario, my ego deflates, becoming temporarily less predatory. The strain and stress of constant judgment is exhausting and virtually intolerable. It is curious an ability so debilitating should be so deeply cherished. The ego vacillates between suspiciousness and viciousness. It remains suspicious as long as I despair of myself. Then it shifts to viciousness whenever I decide not to tolerate its need to belittle me or others. Or it shifts to viciousness whenever I seek relief from its incessant chattering and lies. Do not underestimate the ego self's need to constantly judge and admire its illusions. Be aware, when we are no longer God-centered and are therefore ego-centered, the ego's almost constant judging, manipulating, calculating, and posturing occurs with practically every breath. Its obsession with problems incapable of being solved is a favorite ego device set up to keep you from asking yourself who and what you and your brothers are. Thankfully, grace is the natural state of every child of God. When he is not in a state of grace, he is out of his natural environment and does not function well. Everything he does becomes a strain because he was not created for the environment he has made. He therefore cannot adapt to it, nor can he adapt it to him. There is no point in trying. A child of God is happy only when he knows he is with God. That is the only environment in which he will not experience strain, because that is where he belongs. It is also the only environment that is worthy of him, because his own worth is beyond anything he can make or make up. Consider what you have made and judge its worth fairly. Is it worthy to be a home for a child of God? Does what you have made protect your peace and shine love upon you? Does it keep your heart untouched by fear? Does it teach you that giving is your joy, and that God Himself thanks you for your giving? That is the only environment in which you can be happy. You cannot make it any more than you can make yourself. It has been created for you as you were created for it. God watches over His children and denies them nothing. Yet when they deny Him, they do not know this because they deny themselves their natural environment. Because God shared His being with you, you can know Him. You do not know your true self now because you do not know your Creator. So the question being asked in reference to self-esteem can be answered thus. Given the outcome of that incident in the second column, was my self-esteem hurt because someone or something threatened or affected the way I see myself, thus threatening the deep pleasure I experience when I am allowed to fully admire myself? Now let's look at pride. Given the outcome in the incident in column 2, was my pride hurt because someone or something threatened or affected the way I prefer other people see me or someone associated with me, thus threatening or lessening that deep pleasure I get when people admire me or those associated with me? Did someone or something threaten, ruin, or get in the way of a chance for me or someone associated with me in accomplishing an admirable goal or achievement? The dictionary definition for the word reputation is the beliefs or opinions that are generally held about someone or something. Did someone or something threaten or ruin my reputation or the reputation of someone associated with me? Did someone or something threaten or ruin my admirable possessions or the admirable possessions of someone associated with me? Were my ambitions threatened or affected because someone or something threatened or interfered with my individual agenda, my little plans and designs for me or for me and my little group, separate from the whole? Was my security threatened? Was I or those associated with me put in danger, or was theirs or my freedom, safety, or security put at risk? Was my confidence shaken, or was I given pause to be put in doubt? When we see ourselves as disconnected from the whole, fighting for survival in what appears to be an unforgiving world, even the most subtle incident can invite doubt into the mind. Remember, a thought never enters my mind without an invitation from me. The dictionary definition for the word doubt is 1. A feeling of uncertainty or lack of conviction. 2. Fear, to be afraid. What starts out as doubt can quickly transform into fear, and the ego never passes up an opportunity to make you more fearful in its effort to get you to separate from your brother. Was my personal connection or personal relationship with someone I decided to connect with threatened or interfered with or affected? Was one or more of my sexual or romantic relationships threatened, interfered with, or affected? Were my finances or my family unit's finances being interfered with, threatened, or affected? If any of our self's 7 characteristics were threatened, hurt, affected, or interfered with, then we became afraid. Be sure to write down the word fear next to each of the 7 self-interests listed in the 3rd column of your inventory. Fear, the single emotion of the ego, is the emotion of separation. Fear is recoil into separation, away from a perceived source of danger. Fear is the ego's goal and its essence. The ego must cause fear to perpetuate itself, yet it must conceal from us how fearful we really are. For when we truly look at our fear, we will decide that the cost of the ego is too great, and we will finally consider giving it up. Now, please stop and fill in the 3rd column with the 7 self-interests as they apply. Do not begin the 4th column until you have completed and therefore placed in the 3rd column at least one of the 7 self-interests. Take your time and be thorough. If you find the task overwhelming, slow down and consider only 1 or 2 of the self-interests at a time. If you persist, in a short time you will get the hang of this, as this vital process gradually begins to move along. Be sure not to rush this process. What you learn by doing this exercise is invaluable. Take your time. Be thorough. Please go ahead now and fill in the 3rd column.